Every other deliverer in the book of Judges is an adult when God calls them. They are grown, they're in trouble, and the Lord raises them up. But the last deliverer in the book is different. He is chosen, named, and given his life's assignment before he is even born, before his mother has so much as felt him move. Now, you would think a man handed that kind of head start could not possibly fail. Today, we begin the story of the one who very nearly did so.
From the valley when the shadows gathered near, a whisper shook the mountains, I am here. The Lord raised up a deliverer, light in the dark, standard in the storm. The Lord raised up a deliverer, strength for the weak, a fire to keep us warm.
Welcome to Come Listen With Me. My name is Ricky Black, aka Elder Eleazar, and today is our Friday, May 29th reading in our ongoing Come Follow Me study of the Old Testament, as we continue in the book of Judges with chapters 13 and 14. And today we begin the longest single story in the book, the story of Samson. And it is, by some distance, the strangest. Like, we start where it starts, with an angel, a barren woman, and a vow. So with that, let's come read together. Chapter 13 opens with the cycle, but listen for the change that happens in it. Here in verse 1. And the children of Israel did evil again in the sight of the Lord, and the Lord delivered them into the hand of the Philistines 40 years. 40 years. That is the longest oppression in the entire book. And notice what is missing from that verse. Every other cycle so far has included the line that Israel cried out to the Lord. Here, after 40 years, there is no cry. The people have stopped asking to be rescued. They have settled into life under the Philistines. So when God acts in this story, he acts entirely on his own initiative, without even being asked. And that is the backdrop. Now, then the angel arrives, and he comes not to a soldier or a leader, but to an unnamed woman, the wife of Manoah, who is barren and childless. And this is the pattern of the great miracle births in Scripture: Sarah, Hannah, and later Elizabeth, the mother of John the Baptist. When the text wants to mark a child as set apart for something extraordinary, it often begins with a womb that cannot on its own produce a child at all. And the angel's message comes with conditions, spoken before the boy is even conceived. See that in verse 5. No razor shall come on his head, for the child shall be a Nazarite unto God from the womb, and he shall begin to deliver Israel out of the hand of the Philistines. We need to understand what a Nazarite is, because the whole tragedy of Samson hangs on that knowledge. The word comes from a Hebrew word meaning to separate, to consecrate, or to be set apart. So the vow of the Nazarite is laid out in Numbers chapter 6, and it has 3 marks: no wine or product of the vine, no cutting of the hair, and no contact with a dead body. So now here's a crucial point. In the book of Numbers, the Nazarite vow is something a person chooses for a set period of time, and then they complete it. What is unprecedented about Samson is that he does not choose it, and it never ends. He is a Nazarite from the womb to the day of his death. He is consecrated before he can consent, set apart by a vow he never personally took on. And mark one more word in that verse. He shall begin to deliver Israel. Only begin. So even in the announcement, this deliverance is flagged as incomplete. And there is a beautiful quiet moment when the angel returns to confirm the message to Manoah, and Manoah asks for his name. It's in verse 18. Why askest thou thus after my name, seeing it is secret? Now the word translated secret can be rendered wonderful, right? The same word used in Isaiah's great title for the Messiah, wonderful, counselor. And when Manoah offers a sacrifice, the angel ascends to heaven in the flame of the altar. This is far more than a routine messenger. Now, many readers in our tradition and beyond have seen here another appearance of the premortal Lord himself. The point to hold is that Samson's life begins wrapped in genuine holiness. The calling is real. The consecration is real. Everything is in place. And that is exactly what makes what follows so painful to watch. So now on to chapter 14. And as it opens, the very first thing that the consecrated deliverer does is walk in the complete wrong direction. See here in verses 1 and 2. And Samson went down to Timnah and saw a woman in Timnah of the daughters of the Philistines. Now therefore get her for me to wife. So let's listen to the verbs, because the narrator chooses them very carefully. Samson went down. He saw a woman. Get her for me. So Samson saw and Samson wanted, and Samson said, get her for me. That is the engine of his entire life, compressed into the first 2 verses we meet when we meet him as an adult, right? It's all about appetite and the immediate demand that the appetite be satisfied. He's used to just telling people to give him what he wants, and they do it. So his parents, they do object, though, I mean rightly, that she is a Philistine, an unbeliever. She is outside the covenant. But Samson does not argue the point. He simply repeats himself. She pleases me. Go get her. It's what I want. So the text does add something here that we have to handle very carefully. So in verse 4, it says, but his father and his mother knew not that it was of the Lord, that he sought an occasion against the Philistines. Now, this does not mean that God approved of Samson's lusts or authored his disobedience. It's the same truth that we met on day 1 in the story of Joseph. God is able to weave his purpose even through human choices that are themselves wrong. So Samson is genuinely chasing his own desire, and God, who does not violate Samson's agency, is sovereign enough to bring his larger purpose to pass, even through the flawed pursuit. So both things are fully true at once. Samson is responsible for his choices. God is never knocked off his purpose by them. Now, on the road to Timnah, a young lion attacks Samson, and the Spirit of the Lord comes mightily upon him, and he tears the lion apart with his bare hands. It's pretty impressive. The text then tells us that he didn't tell his father and mother what had happened, like what he had done. And you should hear a small warning bell in that detail, right? Because the pattern of the secret kept from those closest to him begins right here, and it will end his life at chapter 16. And later, returning for the wedding, Samson turns aside to look at the lion's carcass, and he finds a swarm of bees and honey it. And he scoops the honey out, and he eats it, and he shares it with his parents, telling them no one where it came from. Now, this is a really odd scene to read. I think most people go like, what's the deal with, a now like rotting, dried up carcass and eating honey? Like, why is this what we're setting up? But it really comes to life and changes when you read the scene against the Nazirite vow. Because remember, a Nazirite must not touch a dead body. So Samson reaches into a corpse for honey, and he eats literally from death itself. And then he quietly draws his own parents into the defilement without their knowledge. So the text is showing us a man who treats his sacred consecration as if it simply doesn't apply to him, casually, almost without notice. Now, out of that carcass, Samson builds a riddle and wagers it against 30 Philistine men at his wedding feast. And we see that in verse 14. And he said unto them, out of the eater came forth meat, and out of the strong came forth sweetness. And they could not in 3 days expound the riddle. So it is unanswerable because it is built on a private experience that no one else witnessed, and no one else would ever expect. So when his bride weeps and pressures him, he gives up the answer. She passes it on to her people, and Samson loses the wager. And his response? It's not good. It's to kill 30 other men to pay the debt. And so the wedding ends in death, rage, and anger, and tears. And it is worth saying plainly, every thread of this disaster, it traces back to appetite indulged in a consecration that was just ignored. Anyway, that's all the chapters for reading today. So let's bring these 2 chapters home. Let's hold the halves of Samson's story side by side, because the contrast is really the entire lesson that we're supposed to get out of these. Because chapter 13 is one of the most grace-filled patterns of openings in Scripture. A miraculous birth, an angel, a divine calling, a consecration from the womb. I mean, we're beginning in a wonderful place here. No deliverer in the book of Judges is handed more than is handed to Samson. But chapter 14 shows the same young man treating every piece of it as though it was just nothing, just walking by sight, ruled by appetites and lusts, careless with what was holy. So here's what the pair of these two chapters is really teaching. Spiritual privilege is not the same thing as spiritual character. Samson had every advantage, the calling, the gift, the Spirit himself coming upon him in power, and none of it automatically produced obedience. So the gifts were poured in from heaven. The character had to be built, though, daily by Samson. And simply, he didn't build it. So the questions that these chapters press on us is not whether we have been given gifts and callings and blessings. It is, what are we going to do with them? Now, Samson reminds us that you can be genuinely set apart by God and still, choice by small choice, live as though you were not. So the consecration was given to him. What he did with it day by day was always going to be his choice, and he did not choose well. So here's something I want you to take away with you today. So Samson's downfall was never one big dramatic sin. It's a pattern of small ones. An appetite indulged, a vow quietly ignored, a step taken in the wrong direction, and then another and another and another. So today, do an honest inventory for yourself. Like, name for yourself one small thing, just one that you know is pulling you slowly in the wrong direction. Like, think of it this way. The devil himself showed up in front of you, offering you millions of dollars from an ill-gotten source, but assuredly, it won't come back on you. You would easily decline. It's an easy test to pass. Of course you're not going to accept that. This is so wrong. But what if just $20 just somehow came to you through some less than noble path? Would you keep it? What about $1? No one's going to miss it. So now the question is how much your conscience is on sale for. It's how little it can be bought off. So really take a look inward and find something. Not the big dramatic failure, right? But the little one, the one that was easy to excuse. And be honest with yourself and name it. Choose one specific step against it today to never let it kind of get in your way again. And this can be a harder one. So if you're willing, tell me in the comments that, you've made that choice, right? The small turns are the ones that decide where a life can really end up, because they do accumulate very quickly. Anyway, I look forward to engaging with you in the comments as we keep this conversation going. Now, if these chapters have you thinking about gifts, callings, and what we do with them, our companion deep dive this week goes further into the world beyond the book of Judges, right? It takes up the Song of Deborah from chapter 5, the victory poem that the curriculum had set aside. And it is one of the oldest pieces of Hebrew poetry that has survived to us. The links are all in the description, so go check it out. And tomorrow, we finish the book, and we finish the week with Judges chapter 15 and 16. The strength and the fall of Samson, the foxes and the firebrands, the jawbone, Delilah, the haircut, the grinding house at Gaza, and a final scene in the temple of Dagon, where this strange deliverer accomplishes more in his death than in all his life before. Now, this week's study is also paired with Song of the Week, The Lord Raised Up a Deliverer. Fourth verse, it's going to walk straight through Samson's story, the Nazarite promise and the strength braided into his hair. So it makes good company while you study. You can find it linked in the description. If you haven't listened to it yet, go check it out. I think you're really going to appreciate it. Anyway, that's all I have for you today. I'll see you back here tomorrow. And until then, as always, I appreciate you all and thank you for choosing to spend some of your precious time to come listen with me.
And hearts on fire. The Lord raised up a deliverer, and he will again. From cry to courage, from fear to song, he raises up deliverers and pulls us along. Be strong, take heart, lift up your eyes. The Lord still hears, the Lord still replies.